I've been making movies for as long as I can remember.
Get out of here, let's go!
I've been developing a system for screenwriting for the last 10 years. And now, I want to share it with you. Hi, my name is Joe Clark, and I'm a filmmaker residing in Beverly Hills, coming to you live from Las Vegas. This is an online educational program that's designed to bring the idea and the dream for a movie that you have and convert it into a feature-length screenplay. Creating films and stories is one of the most powerful things we can do. A great movie is like a roller coaster. It puts you on a ride, and the story takes you up and down and really puts you through an emotional experience that can impact the way that you look at the world. And there's so many people out there that have a dream for a feature film or a story, and they just don't know how to unlock that potential and what goes into the process. And that's what I want to help you out with. I want to help unlock that potential within you to create that dream feature-length screenplay that can eventually end up on the silver screen. The thing about film, as compared to a lot of other industries, is that it's a wide open map. There really is no set structure in how you get from A to B. It's really about intuiting, knowing what's in your gut, and following that voice that tells you what you think the right path is for your specific story. What works for me might not work for you, but I can pass on the lessons and experiences and the mechanics that go into this process. What I'm hoping to do is have you build your own tool belt and settle into your own routine so that you get excited and invigorated with a lot of passion, and that can fuel you to create your own projects. Our goal is to take the world and the seed of that idea that's in your mind and make a clear vision on the page so that the reader, whether it's a producer, an actor, or another writer, has a clear sense of what's going on. When a builder starts construction on a house, they don't just guess where it's going to end up. They have a blueprint to work off from. Same thing with a feature film. We don't just go into production and start filming things. The blueprint is the screenplay. The process of writing a screenplay is really an exercise in imagination. Your day-to-day life is going to be committed to expanding the horizons of your mindset. We're basically going fishing and becoming aware of all these different ideas that connect in relation to this story. Basically, we're becoming kids again, and we get to use that childhood imagination that, for a lot of adults, disappears after a certain age. And so the screenwriting process is really connecting to that inner child that we've lost touch with. When I was a kid, I loved Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies. For some reason, I was drawn to martial arts and crazy action scenes, and I knew when I watched those movies that this was something I wanted to do. I wanted to make movies like this. I wanted to be like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, and that's where my dream was born. So I'm actually working on a really cool script that I'm excited about right now that I'll be using as an example and a reference throughout this course. And the reason I bring this up is because I work from a place of passion. I only write the things and the projects and the scripts that I really want to make because that's why I get up in the morning. That's why I do this. You can't go into this process 50-50. And that's why we're going to focus a lot of this first part on your mindset. It's vital to get to a point where you're committed and make the decision to write the screenplay. You're going to have a lot of limitations, self-doubt, emotions, and just inner turmoil that's telling you not to do something. It's like in the famous book, The War of Art, resistance. You're going to have so much resistance to putting your ideas down to the paper, whether it's internal or external, and it's important for us to overcome those mental hurdles. Once you start to break down and lower those filters, you're going to find that it's a floodgate of creativity, and it's going to make the process easier and easier. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm so excited to have you join me, and I know that this is going to be a very rewarding and fulfilling journey. Thank you. welcome to Act 1, Mindset. Your mindset will dictate the success and how far you go with your screenplay. A screenplay is like the tip of an iceberg. The reader only sees the top 10%, which is the finished product. However, what people don't see is 90% of the work that goes underneath it. We're going to be putting in 90% of the work before we even get to the actual screenplay itself. That's what this process is all about. And it all starts with the right mindset. I love helping people bring their creative projects to fruition. I want to help you bring that screenplay idea you've had for years into a reality. There are 3 major misconceptions that hold people back from writing a feature-length screenplay. That's lack of time, lack of confidence, and lack of knowledge. All of these tie together to our mindset. Humans limit themselves every single day, and it's a tragedy because we can accomplish way more than we think. Writing doesn't have to be this rigorous process where we're putting all this pressure on ourselves. Lack of time, lack of confidence, and lack of knowledge. These are all false. The first thing you need to do is accept that you do have enough time. You do have the confidence. And quite frankly, you know more than you think. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be here right now. You have that story that you want to write. You have that screenplay inside of you that you've been dying to get out. And I want to help you do that. This course is a bridge between you and your dreams. So how do we find the time? Where do we gain the confidence? Where do we find the information to be able to do this? Well, you've already taken the first step. I want to help give you knowledge to write a high-quality screenplay. The biggest thing to combat your lack of time and your lack of confidence is awareness. Lack of time and lack of confidence is a sign that you're holding yourself back. These are self-limitations. We want to eliminate that judgmental voice inside of us, and we do that through awareness. When we tell ourselves we don't have enough time, that's a sign. When we tell ourselves we're not good enough, that's a sign. It's a sign that we're holding ourselves back. The human mind is capable of anything. You need to accept this. If you don't, you're going to walk into this process already losing. In order to get ahead of this, you need to accept you can do this. You do have the time. You will have the knowledge. And you do have the confidence to write an amazing screenplay. I'm telling you right now, not only is it possible, but by the end of this course, you will have finished an awesome screenplay. Fear and procrastination is a real pain in the ass. There's nothing that will kill your momentum more than fear and procrastination. We have to overcome fear, and we have to overcome procrastination. How long have you been sitting on your screenplay idea? A week? A month? Years? For some people, it's an entire lifetime. There's a self-repeating tape inside their head that's telling them that they can't do it. Or they're putting it off till the next day. And putting things off till the next day inevitably leads to more putting off. You say you're going to do one thing, and then all of a sudden, it's months later, and you haven't made a move yet. The way to overcome fear and procrastination is awareness. We must be aware of when we're being held back by our own self-limitations. This is the reason why we're putting so much work into our mindset. This is bigger than just writing. This is bigger than Hollywood. This is bigger than having your name on a screenplay. This is about overcoming your shit. And our shit derives from our fear. Everything is a reflection of who we are inside. Our external world is a mirror of our internal world. And we need to dig down deep and scrape out all the negativity and fear that's holding us back. We cannot let fear and procrastination bring us down. This is why we set aside technological distractions. This is why we take out the external world and focus exclusively on the moment, being aware, and working on what's in front of us. Facing the blank page is one of the scariest things we can do. Because when we're writing a screenplay, we're looking at ourselves. We're judging ourselves. That judging voice inside our head is what's going to hold us back. But if we become aware of what it is and what it's saying, then we can choose to ignore it and push ahead. We don't have to talk back. We don't have to get angry at ourselves. We don't have to get further judgmental because of the judgmental thoughts. All we have to do is realize that we're having them and keep going. There's going to be so many times throughout this process that you don't think you can do something, or you get stuck, or you don't think it's possible to continue or finish. Just know that that's a great sign that you're growing and you're breaking through the hurdles that you need to progress and evolve and finish the screenplay. At the mountaintop, right before you finish, is when you're going to hit your biggest fears and obstacles. That's when you're going to want to put things off the most. And this is when you can push forward the most and take action and finish what you started. Writing is an adventure in procrastination. You'll do anything but write on the page. It's almost a bizarrely fun mental exercise to see what you're willing to do besides sit down and write. Because I guarantee you, it's going to be so many things that you wouldn't expect, and you're willing to do anything but sit down and sit still and put the work in. If you keep things fun and lighthearted and don't put all this pressure on yourself, you're going to enjoy the process more. You want to enjoy the journey. Writing should be fun. It's not designed to be a miserable experience. All of the stress you put on top of it is coming from you. That's what you need to become aware of. It's you versus you. It's not you versus the page. This is all a reflection of who you are. And once you become aware of those fears and what scares you about this, you can face it head on, take action, and move forward in a graceful and diligent manner.
I forgot one other form of procrastination, but I'm gonna keep this one down low. If you can refrain from playing with yourself down there, your focus goes up, your discipline goes up, and your screenplay quality goes way up. This technique has been used by historical figures like Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. And one of those guys invented everything, and the other unlocked the secrets to the universe. So, I think there's something to it. Okay, try it out. I gotta go.
Story is the most fundamental part of the screenwriting process. We are born storytellers. Storytelling has been a part of human history since the time we've existed. It's a fundamental part of our survival. We rely on narrative to create our own subjective reality. This is our day-to-day experience. We create stories every single day, whether we're aware or not. When it comes to writing your screenplay, The story is the most important part. Story is the driving force of the engine of the screenplay. Story is purpose, from both a meta standpoint and a screenplay perspective. The story you're telling is the reason the screenplay exists in the first place. Why do you want to tell this story? Do you know? You want the skills to flesh out that idea within yourself and express it to the world. It's the reason you're doing this. Story is purpose. One way to practice storytelling is to tell stories in your everyday life. Work on making them exciting and giving them twists and turns. The next time you tell someone a story about how you were late to a meeting or you bought something that was rotten at the grocery store, make it interesting. Pull at our heartstrings. Make it funny. Another thing you can do is study the craft of storytelling. Watch YouTube videos, read books, study movies, start investing passionate energy into the art of storytelling. And in order to become a professional writer, you need to know the ins and outs of effective storytelling. Spend some time and really think about why you're telling your story. Think about why it's important to you. Why does the world need this screenplay? Why does the world need this movie? What is the purpose of this project, both for yourself and the audience? There's a reason you're waking up with that voice in your head saying you should do this. Why you're doing this is going to give you more motivation and give you a reason to put in all this effort that you're going through. You need to know why you're doing this because it's going to drive you that much more and make it that much better. Story is the most important part of screenwriting. Learn it, consume it, become it. Your morning routine is the most important part of your day. It'll single-handedly decide how successful you become. Before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of assembling your screenplay, the last thing I want to do is really get across the dedication and commitment that this is going to take. Hollywood is such an intensely competitive industry, and you really need to make this an all-encompassing effort. This is going to be a foundational lifestyle change for you. You're not just dabbling your toes in this. This is 100% commitment, and that's going to be reflective of every facet of your life. You're going to be journaling more, meditating, exercising, maintaining a healthy social life, and building a core of integrity and grit to make it through this screenplay. This won't be easy. Writing a screenplay from scratch is going to be one of the hardest things you do. And that's a great thing because there's going to be growth and you're going to become a new person throughout this. I think that's very exciting. Every time I write a new screenplay, I shed skin and I become a new layer and a deeper version of myself. You're going to stretch your horizons, you're going to get out of your comfort zone, and you're going to be thinking outside of the box. Writing a screenplay is a mirror for your entire life. Your habits, your actions, your decisions, everything you do is going to be reflective on the page. The higher quality and the more pure your lifestyle can be, the more dynamic and pure your screenplay is going to be. They reflect one another. If you're out and about, you're not taking things serious, you're partying all the time, you're not going to be able to write. You're not going to be writing anything good. Anyone that romanticizes the idea of like a Hunter S. Thompson who's just doing drugs the whole time and partying and an alcoholic or whatever, that's kind of a miserable lifestyle. We don't want that. We can separate the chaos in front of the camera and behind the camera. We can maintain a healthy, balanced, and passionate lifestyle that's going to be reflective on the page. Meditation, journaling, yoga, running, walking, cold showers. Cold showers are one of my biggest hacks that I always preach. It's very simple. You get into a shower like you usually do, and for the last half of it, you flip the switch and make it as cold as you can. Now, it sounds pretty miserable, right? It sounds like a nightmare. But after a few days, what happens is you start to build discipline, and you overcome this small thing, which will then help with procrastination or writer's block, and it'll push you to overcome those shortcomings and those limitations within your mindset. This is just one thing you can do. My entire life is built on expanding my creativity through my habits. Maintaining balance is also paramount. You can't just sit in your room and write for 10 hours a day and expect it to be healthy and turn out well. You have to have friends, relationships. Filmmaking is really a celebration of your life and living life to the fullest. It's all about going out, living your dreams, and doing the things you want to do according to how you want to do them. That's pretty liberating when you think about it. All of the mechanics and formatting we'll talk about is very important. But the priority is to set the foundation within yourself of how you're living your life. Building, structuring, and maintaining those fundamental life habits are going to push your screenplay to the upper echelon. You want to take pride in what you're doing. This isn't just for fun. This isn't a hobby. This is your life now. And even if you get out of it and you hate the whole thing and you don't want to ever write a screenplay again, that's fine. But if you do choose to make the decision to turn your dream idea into a screenplay, you need to commit 100% or it will not work. The more you commit to this process, the better screenplay you'll write. I promise. All right, now let's actually get started and write the screenplay. So, first things first. Before we win the Academy Award for Best Screenplay and attend our red carpet premieres and see our name under the lights, what we have to do is set the right working environment. Now, if we're going to write a great screenplay, we can't have any outside distractions. And in today's society, that's much easier said than done. The best thing to do is to get rid of all technology and distractions. That means shutting down your laptop, shutting off your cell phone, getting off social media, not checking your email, and eliminating all technological distractions. Our goal is to be as present and in the moment as possible. And with all these potential dopamine hits around us, that can be very difficult. When you sit down to write, you're going to have a million different things pop up in your mind of what you should be doing instead of writing. Every time we check our email or our Instagram or our TikTok, our train of thought is interrupted, and that's going to kill all momentum. The more that we can fall into the moment and go down the rabbit hole and really explore and live inside the world of the script, that's the thing that's going to bring it to life. And every time we pull out of that rabbit hole to go check our email, that's immediately causing a rift. We don't want that. We need to eliminate all temptation. Turn your phone off. Do not allow yourself to get on the internet. This is a detachment exercise. We are disconnecting for the sake of connecting to the screenplay. We need to be living inside of it. This is all about priorities. If you're not dedicated to the screenplay, you're signaling to your brain that the cat video on YouTube is more important than what you're writing on the page. We want that abyss of creativity, which is infinite inside of our minds, to be as free-flowing and lucid as possible. Do not allow yourself to be tempted by technological distractions. Stick to the page and put yourself in an environment that's going to allow yourself to succeed. Quentin Tarantino writes one scene a day. He writes the first half during the daytime. Then he goes and hangs out in his pool. And then he writes the second half at night. That's an awesome life. So we're finally here. We get to start writing. Now the million-dollar question is, where do we start? What do we write? Now, you either have a story idea that's completely fleshed out in your mind, or you have the ambition that you want to write a story. To start out, I want to give you an overview for a writing system that I've been using for years now. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Use what works for you. What works for me might not be best for you. So take these little pieces that you like and apply them to your own routines and create your own customized path. That's what this is all about. Finding what works for you and developing your own system so that you can write consistently and habitually and get to the end of the screenplay. The biggest thing is curating a day-to-day lifestyle that allows me to get the ideas out in my mind when they come to me and catch them and get them immediately out. So what I like to do is I carry notebooks just about everywhere I go. I have a small notepad that I have in a backpack. I have a regular size notebook. And I also have my cell phone, which usually I like to handwrite things because I feel it embeds deeper into your psyche and you remember things more. And it's just more productive to handwrite. However, when you're out and about, you're in the grocery store, in the bathroom, whatever it is, and you have an idea that comes to you, you want to get it down right away. So sometimes that means just getting your notepad out on your cell phone and just jotting down whatever idea you have. Now, what are you actually writing? For me, I refer to them as Lego pieces. Basically, it's all thoughts that I think are worthy of being written down. And that could be anything and everything. I like to write down things that I need to remember, character names, storylines, birthday gifts, whatever it is, I get it down. This can be anything and everything. I'm constantly writing throughout the day. As soon as something pops in my mind that I think might be useful for anything, I get it down. This writing system is almost less about writing and more about organization. What's great about this is you can be writing on the go. A lot of times I'll be on my bike or I'll be going somewhere or on the way and I'll get an idea. I get out my notepad, I jot down the idea, and then I'm on my way. So you're kind of attached to the writing lifestyle, which you want, especially if you're in the thick of a screenplay. Whatever you write down doesn't necessarily have to be correlated to that specific screenplay you're working on. It could be anything. Writing everything and anything that comes to your mind is exercising your mind's ability to come up with more ideas, and it'll set that precedent so that you keep writing. And eventually this will funnel towards the screenplay. Your mind wants to finish that screenplay, and so your subconscious mind is going to help you by pushing you towards ideas. The only thing that's going to hurt you in this process is if you don't write down your ideas. That's going to crush the creativity, and it's going to tell your brain that it's not important to write. If you're too lazy to write down something the first time and another idea comes to you, you're less likely to write down that second idea. You really want to get in this habit of writing things down when they come to you. So what you do is throughout the day, you might have various notes on your cell phone or your notebooks or wherever it is. You can obviously write on your computer. I also have a typewriter. And you conglomerate all these different sources of Lego pieces. And at the end of the day, you'll have a list of everything you've written down. Don't do anything with the material yet. Sleep on it. This is going to give you some perspective. It'll reset your creativity, and your subconscious mind likes to cleanse itself throughout the night. Now, the key part is the first thing you do when you wake up is you gather all of the things you've written from the day before, and you sit down on your computer, and you review the different Lego pieces. And what you're going to start to do is grow your garden of projects that you're working on. Now, if you're working on your first screenplay, it's going to be easy because you can just start a Google Doc. I love Google Docs. They're very easy to keep all of my ideas separate and categorized, and I don't have to put energy into remembering where a certain idea is going. It's an organizational technique. It's a network of all of my different projects. I have everything from screenplays, goals, values, and everything in between. And I've been growing this garden of different Google Docs for years now. So what you do is you review all of your Lego pieces that you've written from the day before. You're going to start to review each piece one by one. So let's say I have an idea for a scene in a screenplay I'm working on, the Bruce and Jackie one, where I want to do a fight scene between Bruce and Jackie. So what I do is I create my Google Doc that's specifically catered for that screenplay. And all I do is put all associated ideas into that specific Google Doc. Don't worry about organization yet. You just want to create an archive of different thoughts and ideas that are related to it. And you start to build it out. So everything that's associated that you've written from the day before, you put it there. Let's say you were writing the day before, you went to the library for a couple hours, and you just happen to come up with a different screenplay idea. And you're like, I don't want to work on it right now because I have this other one I'm working on. You can just start another Google Doc and just put all those ideas from the day before in there. And what's going to happen is you do this every single day. So you review the Lego pieces from the day before. And sometimes after about 8 hours of sleeping, you'll get a perspective and you'll see something that, that doesn't quite fit. I don't really need that. You can make that judgment at that point. The biggest thing is taking action when you get an idea inside your brain. This is a habit where logic doesn't have its place. You don't have to listen to whether or not you think something is good. All you want to do is eliminate that filter and that self-critic and just write whatever comes to your mind. Writing is a disciplinary action, and it's something that you build on a day-to-day basis, like a muscle that you would build at the gym. A lot of this system is built around people who are on the go, who have full-time jobs already, that might not have that set-aside time to just sit down and write a screenplay. However, obviously, it is most ideal to set aside at least 2 to 3 hours where you block out the outside world and you exclusively work on your screenplay. As we said before, eliminating distractions and getting yourself into the right environment is going to be the key to success. I love to use the library. Public libraries are the most underutilized resources that we have in our culture. It's an environment where the energy is very like-minded amongst the people there. Everyone is there to get their work done and to be quiet and to do the things they need to do. Obviously, there's exceptions and there's some people that are very loud and you'll find some characters, but for the most part, it's a really effective space to explore your imagination and get your thoughts onto the page. When you think of writers, you probably think of yourself as locked in a room for 10 or 15 hours like Stephen King. And there are days like that. When you tap into your ability to just black out and get lost in the moment and start writing, absolutely do not stop. A good friend of mine referred to this as magic bottle days. That's when things just flow out and it seems like it's unstoppable and you can't do anything but keep writing. That's a great flow to be in, and obviously tap into that as much as possible. As long as you're at least allocating an hour to hopefully 3, then you will make progress on the screenplay and get to where you need to go to. It's really important throughout this to have fun writing. Most people think of the writer's life as this miserable, difficult, soul-torturing journey that kills the writer slowly. We don't have to be that dramatic. Writing should be fun. My favorite time to write is the first thing in the morning. You're your most relaxed, you're your most reset, your subconscious mind has been cleansed from the night before, and that self-critic that's always trying to put that resistance in your mind is at its lowest volume. So you're most pure in the morning. That's when I always get my ideas out, and that's when I try and flow as much as possible. But don't forget, your day doesn't end there. You have your notebooks, you have your cell phone, you have your computer. At any point throughout the day and night, you should have access to get your ideas out in one form or another. Now that we have the foundation set for how we're catching our ideas, let's move on. One thing I want to mention that might seem small, but it has a big impact, is office supplies. So when you go to buy writing materials, you don't want to just buy the cheapest options. I like to buy nice pens. I invest in expensive notebooks. Investing in a high-quality notebook is going to encourage me to write even more. You are a professional writer, so make sure you're investing in materials that are going to make you perform at your best level. Reading is the perfect complement to writing. Stephen King said, "If you're not consistently reading, then you're not a true writer." So now that we've established our day-to-day writing routine and we're starting to get into the flow of just being able to write anything, we can start to laser in and harness our focus towards our specific screenplay idea. Now for this next step, it can either work toward if you already have a specific idea for the screenplay, or you just have the ambition and you want to write something. It doesn't really matter what stage you're at. The most important thing is that you're taking action. The next thing you're going to do is start a fresh document and label it Things I Want to See. Now it's very self-explanatory. What you're going to do is you're going to list out everything that you want to see happen in the movie that you're writing. I've been doing this for the last 15 years with all of my films. It's one of the first steps that I take after I have the inception of whatever that story idea is. I've even used it when I have no idea what the screenplay is going to be, and I just have a bunch of loose ideas of what I want to put in a movie. You're creating the clay for what you're going to mold the specific story idea from. Once you have that blank page set up, I want you to go crazy. Write down everything that comes to your mind. Do not think anything is too ridiculous. Don't put any limitations on yourself. Don't allow yourself to think that something is impossible. Simply put everything that you want to see happen in relation to the screenplay and the final product of the movie. So for Bruce and Jackie, I put a few notes down that are all over the place and they don't have a lot of rhyme or reason, and I don't know how they're going to connect yet. What's happening throughout this is that you're excavating these passion project ideas and you're getting them out on the page, and it's going to serve as a reference point for why you're doing what you're doing. This goes back to our mindset. Why are you writing this screenplay? Why is this story so important to you? Why is this dream so important to you? This is going to be that platform for which you can always go back and see specifically why you're doing what you're doing. Again, I can't emphasize enough. Have fun with this. This is when you get to accomplish anything you want to accomplish ever in your lifetime. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's not. I put things that are ridiculous on here. Or it might seem ridiculous, but for me, I've been doing it so long that I want to shoot for the moon. I want to go to the stars on this. So for Bruce and Jackie, obviously, I want to get Bruce Lee's family involved. So I'm going to put that down. I want Jackie Chan to be in the movie. I want him to produce it. I even put, I want Jackie Chan to direct this movie and have me be the writer. That would be friggin' awesome. That's checking so many boxes in my core for my dreams and who I am that it creates this dynamic engine within myself to be constantly motivated to not only finish the screenplay, but do it well enough that it catches the attention of Jackie Chan. That's a big goal of mine. Another note I put is that I want this to be the first ever movie to have both Jackie Chan style fight scenes and Bruce Lee style fight scenes. They're known for their very two different styles, and I think this is the perfect project to combine those and add those two variations, which would create a dynamic that, as an action fan, we've never really seen before. So again, that's very exciting to me. There's a bunch of songs that came to my mind, like Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation, which is like a cheesy disco song. I described in detail what I want the movie poster to look like. I've put stuff like, I want to do a boat chase, or I want to have a payphone in a film. That sounds really weird. Like, why are you writing that down? Well, I think payphones look interesting in movies. So I wrote that down. Let's get a payphone in this movie. You see, there's no connection between these ideas and these string of thoughts. They're just different things that are coming to my mind that I can connect and create that layer and that foundation for which I'm going to leap from for the actual formatting and structure of the screenplay. It might not be evident yet, but just stick with the process because we're trying to curate that why of what we're doing. You want to have zero filter between your mind and the page. And the Things I Want to See document is vital because it's going to provide the key for your passion and a reference point for where you're building and where you want to go. give yourself enough time to work on that things I want to see document. Don't rush it. View it as a wish list that you're concocting for Santa Claus. You're creating all the different Christmas presents you want to see underneath the tree on Christmas morning. That's what that document represents. This is how screenplays are written. It's people's dreams becoming a reality. When you break down the idea of what a movie is, it's kind of trippy. You're writing a vision that started here and you're projecting it out into the real world in something that's not tangible, but as an experiential concept. That's what a film is. And the things I want to see document paves the way for that path. Now we're going to move on to loglines. A logline is the thesis statement of your screenplay. It's the nucleus of your movie. It's a one-sentence summary that acts as an umbrella for which everything in the screenplay falls under. In Hollywood, the logline is the most important part of the screenplay. It's the heart and core of what the story is, distilled into one sentence. That can put a lot of pressure on things, and it's not going to happen overnight. A logline is constantly evolving until the end product is written. If you want to break into the film business, getting good at loglines is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. It's very challenging because you have to represent so much in a compact set of space. But if you can represent the vision of the screenplay in one concise sentence that packs together all of these different elements, then you can really sell the idea and the concept of the movie at large. And that's when the idea really gains steam. So I'm going to review the key elements that go into an effective logline. Number one, you have to list who the main character is. Usually it's the protagonist or the hero of the film, but if you want to bend the rules, it can be whoever is featured the most or whoever goes on the arc or the main journey of the story. Let's take the classic movie Rocky. Obviously, that's the main character. Rocky is a underdog, past his prime brawler who never had a chance at getting into the big leagues for boxing. The logline also establishes the setting of the screenplay. You want to establish the time period and setting of where the screenplay takes place. So for Rocky, that would be Philadelphia in the mid-70s. A logline should also have an inciting incident. The inciting incident is the pivot point event of the main character's everyday life that puts him on the journey of this story. So for Rocky, he's this southpaw boxer in 1970s Philadelphia who's past his prime, but he happens to get a shot at the world heavyweight title. The inciting incident of Rocky is the championship opportunity that he receives. One of the most important parts to establish the logline is the conflict. So for Rocky, he's past his prime, he's an underdog, and he never really had a shot at the big leagues. And so the journey is him trying to prove to himself that he's not just another boxer off the street, but he actually is special. And it's that inner conflict and trying to attain that American dream. That's the inner journey of Rocky. A conflict can be either internal or external, or both. So let's take another film, Jaws. In Jaws, the conflict is pretty self-explanatory. There's a killer shark, and there's 3 local people that go to war against the shark. It's humans versus beast. That's the tug of war that's happening in Jaws. So there's main character, setting, conflict, and the last thing you want to put is a sense of irony wrapping around the whole story. What does this mean? This can be kind of tricky and conceptual, but you want the conflict to be part of the irony. So let's take Rocky, for example. Rocky is the main character. He's past his prime. He's never reached the big leagues, and he doesn't think he's good enough to attain his dreams. The irony of Rocky is that through a set of circumstances, he is offered an opportunity to fight for the World Heavyweight Championship. So here's this underdog boxer who's got no chance, all of a sudden is thrust into a spotlight where he can become the world heavyweight champion. The conflict is that Rocky doesn't think he's good enough to become world heavyweight champion, but the irony is that he gets the opportunity to prove to himself that he is. We'll do one more example. Let's take Armageddon. The main character is Bruce Willis. He's in charge of an oil rig ship, and it takes place, I think, in like Texas in the late 90s. And the conflict is that there's an asteroid headed for Earth. This is an external conflict. So what's the irony? The irony is that NASA's solution for the asteroid heading for Earth is to hire these oilmen who have this special set of skills to destroy the asteroid. And they have to train them to become astronauts. So you're combining these two elements where there's both conflict that are pushing against one another, but it's also pulling. The push is the conflict. The tension is coming from this unlikely group of people who are hired to stop this asteroid that you wouldn't think. This creates a compelling narrative that entices us to be drawn in and go along with this ride, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. Your logline will evolve, and that's okay. And you're going to be rewriting it, tweaking it, because everything you put in that thesis statement, that logline, must be somewhere represented in the screenplay itself. There can be zero disconnect between the logline and the screenplay. When you think back to college of writing an essay, you had your thesis statement. It's a defining sentence that represents everything we're going to see happen in the story. Now, one other important note before we wrap up. In the logline, do not give away the ending to your story. You want to hang on to that. A logline is a carrot on the stick. You want to sell what this idea is and lure whoever the reader is into the story through that one sentence. And this can be very powerful because if you have a logline that's enticing enough, you can get producers, name actors, other writers, and other important people in the industry to read your screenplay. So the magic is to take everything in your things I want to see document and distill it into a one-sentence summary, the logline, which compels the reader to want to read the rest of the screenplay. If you can do that, then you're well on your way to making a feature film. The genre of the film is the vehicle in which the plot and the conventions exist. We all know the different archetypes of movies. This include action, drama, comedy, family, holiday. Genre is a liaison between your story idea and the audience. Genre helps the film and the screenplay become more commercial. And by doing that, you give yourself a better chance at getting the movie made. Yes, you can have the most outside-the-box experimental film that becomes widely successful. There's always exceptions. However, if you're just starting out and this is your first screenplay, a genre is a great way to connect to the audience. It gives them a sense of familiarity and comfortability. And to have that kind of access is key to connect with an audience. If you don't have a genre on your film and you're just existing for the sake of existing, you're going to lose your audience. And if you want this screenplay to get made, you really have to think about from the sense of the audience as well as yourself. Because to give yourself as big a chance to make this movie as possible, you want that audience potential to exist. And a genre is a great way to structure that to appeal to a certain audience. Don't view it as confining your creativity. It's more of creating a structure and a domain that'll help improve your craft and make you more creative at the end of the day. I really want to encourage you to think outside of the box. However, I strongly suggest you pick a genre and stick to it, especially if this is your first time writing a screenplay. Think about your story. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it a zombie movie? You can have multiple genres, but I like to stick to a maximum of 2, especially starting out. No one wants to read the movie that's a zombie movie and a love story and it takes place in space. I found that 1 or 2 genres is really the sweet spot. Pick the one that feels right for you and move forward. Coming into this course, you should have basic understanding of plot and the traditional 3-act structure. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I do have a couple quick notes. As I've mentioned, if this is your first foray into screenwriting, you shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel. Stick to the basics. Much like genre, having a 3-act story with the basic plot points is going to give you structure. This is there to assist you. Traditional story arcs have been in existence since the beginning of time. There's a reason why we keep using them over and over again. It's because it allows us to connect with the audience. It gives them comfortability. As much as I want to encourage your creativity, having structure will allow you to connect with your reader. So yes, go crazy on the page. Write whatever you want. But if you want to get this film made, then I think sticking to a 3-act structure with the basic plot points increases your chances of getting this screenplay produced. And that's why we're here. It's show business. Yes, we can get as creative as we want, but there's still a business to connecting with an audience through marketing and traditional storytelling techniques. The plot of the screenplay is the events of the story. The story itself, it's what's underneath the plot. The difference between plot and story is that plot is the surface level, what's actually happening, and the story is why it's happening. The following items are the events that take place on the plot diagram. So first is the exposition. This is the everyday world of the main character. We establish who they are and their day-to-day existence. The pivot point is the inciting incident. This is the event that changes everything. It puts the main character on their journey and sets them on course for their character arc. The rising action is the journey that the character goes on after their everyday world is interrupted. These are the challenges, the roadblocks, and the obstacles that the main character goes through. The climax is the point of the story when the main character confronts both their inner and external conflict. It's the finale. This is the moment of the highest tension. It decides whether or not the main character is going to make it, both from an internal and external standpoint. We've reached the peak. It's the apex of the main character's journey. The following action is the aftermath of the climax. It shows how everything has changed for the main character and the world around them. And finally, we get to the resolution, which is the ending and how we wrap the story up. And we divide these up between acts 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't matter how we utilize these events, but it is important that we're using them as a structure. Structure is a guide that can help our creativity. It creates a universe that everyone is familiar with and allows us to become more creative within those guidelines. With genre, plot, and 3-act structure, you can use these to enhance your creativity and make your screenplay more polished and likely to be made. Writing a screenplay is like carving an ice sculpture. We started with our block of ice on the things I want to see document. After we distilled our main ideas into the log line, now we're going to expand that into what we call a one-pager. A one-pager is a summary of all of the major details of your screenplay. This includes the log line, genre, themes, target audience, why the movie will succeed, and influence. There are many stories in Hollywood where the logline alone will sell a multi-million-dollar movie. A one-pager can be just as useful, and it's also helpful for yourself. It gives you a big picture perspective of what the movie is and what you want it to be. And a one-pager will help flesh the vision out for both yourself and the reader. We want to give breadcrumbs to these people that can help us make the movie. These are producers, investors, name actors. We want to give them these pieces that help materialize what the screenplay is. This is the Bruce and Jackie one-pager. Themes are what the movie is really about. So underneath the plot points and what actually happens, the theme is the message we're trying to convey through the screenplay. Themes for Bruce and Jackie include friendship, honor, legacy, and breaking cultural barriers. The one-pager can also act more as a business commodity because it shows you're thinking past the screenplay. You're thinking big picture of how the movie's going to play to worldwide audiences. The target audience for Bruce and Jackie would be people that are interested in the history of these two cultural figures, stories about friendship, rivalry, as well as people into action comedies. I like to include a brief statement of why I think a movie will succeed, because it just shows that you believe in the project and you're passionate about it. It shows you're thinking more outside of yourself. You're thinking about who this will appeal to and how you're going to connect to an audience. So for this, I put it features iconic figures in martial arts, it has a compelling setting, and it has universal themes such as friendship and legacy. I also like to include 5 movie titles that I think capture the essence of the screenplay we're writing. Putting like-minded films will help with the expectations for the reader. We want to get them comfortable so that they can sink into the story as easily as possible. The one-pager is the best way to flesh out your vision. So now that we have the seed of the screenplay, we're going to go one step further and flesh this out into a full document. Now that we have a logline, a one-pager, a genre, and we're starting to assemble some structure, it's time to flesh out our scenes. What goes into a movie scene? Each scene in a screenplay is its own mini story. Each scene should have its own twists and turns, character development, and pivot points that make it interesting, compelling, and keeps the viewer watching or reading. If nothing's happening, there's no reason for us to continue. This goes back to our story and our purpose. What is the purpose for the scene that you're writing? If you're putting things in the script that serve no purpose, there's no reason for us to continue reading. Everything should be in there for a reason. If you enter a scene and there's no character or story development, then it serves no purpose and it should be eliminated. The rule of thumb is there are about 35 to 40 scenes in a complete feature film screenplay. Act 1, you'll have about 8 to 10. Act 2 is usually the biggest chunk. You'll have about 15 to 20. And then Act 3, another 5 to 10 scenes to wrap up the story. I've talked about the contrast between creativity and logic. And in this case, each scene should have a progressive order that logically follows each of the steps that came before it. There should be a logical progression from one scene to the next. We want to get the viewer to turn the page, and we do this with a sense of purpose and logic. Every scene should have its own contained story that fits with the whole and is driven by purpose, character development, and gets the reader to turn the page. Using note cards is one of my favorite techniques to enhance a screenplay's quality. On a page, it's very cut and dry, whereas with note cards, It really gives a three-dimensional feel to the visualization of the world of your screenplay. Note cards are also a tremendous way to get rid of writer's block because it allows you to see things in a different light and change your perspective that you don't get from just staring at a computer screen or a blank notebook page. When we're in the day-to-day and we're constantly on that grind of putting pressure on ourselves to come up with new ideas and to make the screenplay as good as possible, it's easy for us to get stuck in a rut. And so every time that happens to me, I always draw up a new set of note cards because it really gives me a different look at how to visualize the film. Make sure you have a lot of room and you can really spread the space out because having note cards is going to open up visually that opportunity to really unravel those story knots and those bottleneck moments where you get stuck or in a rut or you don't quite know how to break through a specific plot point or character moment or whatever it is. It's natural that we're going to hit roadblocks and obstacles, and any little thing that we can do to get around that or go through it is going to be an effective technique. I have different categories that I use. Again, a big theme of this whole course is I want you to use what you like and apply it to your own process. Not everyone's going to be the same, so you have to really customize it to whatever is going to work for you to get to the end of the screenplay. So the first category I do is influence. And under here, I put 5 movie titles that I think reflect the tone, the genre, the feel, and the general atmosphere of how I see reflected in the script that I'm writing. These titles represent that precise tone that I'm going for. And when I just look at them as a whole, I get a very instinctual feeling of how I want that movie to be or come across when an audience member is watching it. The next category is characters. It's very simple. For every one note card, I put one of the characters from the script. Again, this is a great way to just visualize and get everything out in the open, and it's in the real world. It's not just on the screen. You can see it, you can visualize it, you can feel it. Go through the script, go through your fish tank, go through that Google document, and every character that appears in the screenplay, you're gonna put down and visually represent them with one note card. So we have characters, influence, and now for the meat and potatoes. For every one scene in the movie, you're going to represent it with one note card. People have their different rule of thumbs for how many scenes should be in a movie, but usually I like to think of it as 40 note cards for 40 different scenes, and each scene is about 3 to 5 minutes long, depending on what's happening and the importance of it. I keep things very basic, just whatever is actually happening in the scene. I come up with a headline, usually stays pretty consistent so that as soon as I see it, I know exactly what this scene is. So what's going to happen is that you're going to align all of the different scenes under each act. By laying everything out, you really get a sense of the different dots and you're able to connect the tissue of the story. And it's easy to rearrange the scenes and see how things connect so that it's creating a cohesive whole. I would say for each draft, I create a whole new set of note cards. And by the time we're done with a finished screenplay, it's going to be 8 or 9 different sets of note cards. And it just keeps spinning, and that's okay. Evolution is good for this. When a screenplay starts, it's going to be completely different by the end. After you're done laying out and naming all the scenes, the last category is the soundtrack. This is probably my favorite part of this stage because you really let your imagination run wild. Don't worry about licensing or the logistics of getting the song. We're just creating that movie that we want to see in our minds. I'm not going to go over what it takes to get the rights to a song, but just know that it's possible to get what you want to get. It's possible to use whatever song you think that would be a great fit for the scene or the movie. So don't limit yourself to what you think is possible. Just put down that song that you want to use. What's also nice about visually putting down the soundtrack is that a lot of the times I'll listen to the songs while I'm writing in my day-to-day, and that'll spur on momentum and really thrust me into the world of the film. And it's just going to build like a snowball and unlock different ideas. A lot of the times I'll just re-listen to the song over and over again, and I'll start it over, and that'll jog different visuals of the scene. Whatever I'm seeing in my brain when it's matching up to the song, to the specific scene, I'm just taking notes and I'm writing those Lego pieces and those loose threads. And then I can organize and shore them up and tighten it as we move along. So writing the soundtrack not only is fun, but it's really a great tool to unlock different ideas within your mind. So, influence, characters, acts 1 through 3 with the different scenes, and the soundtrack. If you do this, spread it over across the table, it will unlock different ideas and push the process forward for you. Try it out. At this point, you should have your 35 to 40 scenes selected. Not everything has to be perfect yet. We just want to lay the foundation. We're going to use these scenes to build our treatment. A movie treatment is a long-form synopsis, usually between 10 and 20 pages long, that describes everything that happens in the movie. One technique to do this is to visualize yourself in the movie theater watching the finished product. Write down everything that you see. Dictate the entire experience of what the movie looks like from start to finish. This is useful because we're going to ultimately use this as our reference and our guide as we translate it into screenplay format. As you'll notice, we're assembling all of these materials as our groundwork, from the logline, the genre, the structure, and now we lay everything out on the table and we know all the events that happen. This is going to make the script writing infinitely easier because now we know everything that happens. A treatment is also a great tool to get someone to read your script. As I mentioned before, most people don't want to read your screenplay, especially producers who are pitched hundreds, if not thousands, of movie ideas a week. It's hard to get people to commit to reading your screenplay. So having a well-written treatment goes a long way in hooking a reader to read your script. You're probably saying to yourself, this is a screenwriting course. When are we actually going to write a screenplay? Well, all of these materials are leading to the final product and are making it easier. There's a reason why we're working on the fundamentals. The treatment is just another building block toward the finished product, and it's going to enhance and increase the quality of your screenplay. The journey from the inception of your idea to a screenplay is not an easy one. So if you made it this far, that's a sign that you're ready. Now we come to the mothership. I call this the fish tank. This is where our hard work starts to really pay off. I named it the fish tank after David Lynch's personal development book, Catching the Big Fish. David Lynch is one of my biggest influences in my career. And he talks about meditation and how meditation is a form of fishing, and it increases our chances of catching fish. The fish tank will be our home base for everything associated with this project. It's the full collection of ideas under one document. Inside, we start with our one-pager. I then like to digitize all of the note cards that we previously worked on. So I put a list of the main characters, scenes, the soundtrack, and influence. You can expect changes throughout the project. That's why I like to put a section with Lego pieces. The Lego pieces are similar to the ones we were writing in our writing system. They're loose ideas that aren't quite fleshed out enough to be applied yet. The Lego pieces are still floating around. We don't quite know where they're going to fit, and we need more time and perspective to test the compatibility. I also like to put producer notes. This is a different hat that we wear. Producer notes are more meta, business-associated ideas that can be useful to bring the script to fruition. So this might include a list of people that might be interested in the screenplay. This could be name actors that we're interested in, potential budget. Any business idea that's associated with the film should be put under this category. The fish tank is our official document for this project. It's going to be useful because you can look at it from every angle. It has both the creative and the business component to it. This will serve as our Bible for when we finally translate it into a full screenplay. Once we have the fish tank fully set up, we have arrived. We're ready for the first draft of our screenplay. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived. Let's write a screenplay. The two main screenwriting softwares are Final Draft and Celtics. Both are intuitive and easy to use. Since Celtics is a free program, I'm going to go ahead and use that for this demonstration. Create your account, log in, and open up a new document. Let's also open up our fish tank and go down to the treatment. The treatment is going to be converted into our screenplay. We're going to go scene by scene and translate it into screenwriting format. I'm going to skip ahead to a scene in the middle of the script. This is between Sammo Hung and Bruce Lee. This scene is based on a Hong Kong legend that supposedly happened between Sammo Hung and Bruce Lee. They engaged in a secret fight, and supposedly Sammo Hung said it was close. Let's convert this scene to screenplay format. These are the different formatting sections. We have scene heading, which is the headline that we use for every scene of the movie. Action, which describes the stage action that's happening on screen. The character is the person that's talking. The dialogue is the words that they're saying. Parentheticals are used underneath characters to describe how they feel or how they're conveying their dialogue. Transitions happen in between scenes. You don't want to overuse these, but I will use an example in this scene. Shot refers to the camera shot, describing what we see through the lens. And text refers to text on screen. That could be you establishing the location or the year. Once you get used to the shortcuts in the keyboard, it's very easy to move quickly and efficiently through this process. In the beginning, we always start with a scene heading, represented by this highlighted section. The scene heading establishes the location and setting of the scene. We always begin with either interior or exterior. If the scene takes place inside, it's interior. If it's outside, it's exterior. This interaction takes place at Golden Harvest Movie Studios. So we're going to say interior, Golden Harvest Studios. Then we go another step further and specify where at in the studio the scene is taking place. So this is the hallway, and then the time of day, which is morning. Usually you want to start out with a brief description that sets the stage. Not only should this write quickly, it should read quickly. We want to get into the action and get out. It should be very snappy. Just a couple lines of stage action should do the trick. After the setup, we move on to our dialogue. As you can see from the top tab, it switches over to dialogue and character. The software will automatically switch these settings for you, which is very nice. You'll see on the tab above what category you're writing as. So it switches from character to dialogue, and you know exactly what you're writing. I like to break up my dialogue every few lines with just a small glimpse of the stage action. Less is always more. Here's an example of the parentheticals. You don't want to overuse these because it can become a crutch, but it is a good way to convey the tone of how someone is speaking. So here we have Bruce and Samo communicating and starting to trash talk one another. Once again, I'm following the guide from my treatment. This scene is the same scene from the treatment. It's just a sculpted version of that chunk of description. Use the treatment as your guide and flow through the process. You shouldn't be overthinking this. Let the voices of the characters come through your mind. I like to have short, punchy dialogue just because it just moves quicker. You don't want to get bogged down in this. So this is where I describe the actual fighting match between Bruce and Samo. Again, it's easy to fall into the trap of over-describing and writing too much in this instance. I like to get very dramatic and expressive when describing the stage action. I want to give readers the impression of what they're watching on the movie screen. I don't mind going over the top, especially because the script and the story is over the top in nature. I don't know what this fight scene is going to look like. I haven't gotten there yet. However, I can describe the atmosphere of what it's going to feel like. And by getting across this vision, it gives the reader a sense of the experience. The screenplay is not the finished product. It's the blueprint for the movie. So we want to do our best to convey what the experience is going to be like. All I know is that this fight scene is going to be awesome. When we get to the actual filming, we'll have stunt coordinators and professional fighters and all that. For the sake of the story, we can just describe the excitement and the kick-ass nature of the fight. So in this scene, of course, Bruce wins the fight. We then come to a twist in the scene where Bruce offers Samo a job on his next movie because he's impressed by his fighting skills. You can see the rhythm of how I'm using dialogue versus stage action. Each section should only be 1 or 2 sentences long before moving on to the next one. So this is where the joke of the scene comes in. Bruce offers Samo the job, and Samo accepts, saying it's an honor of a lifetime. So this is where a transition is going to come into play. I want to convey that we're doing a hard cut to the next scene. That's going to assist with the joke. So we go to our transition category and say cut to. We move on to our next scene heading, and we establish quickly that we're in a different environment. So the joke here is that we cut abruptly to the next scene, and Samo is bragging that he won the fight, and Bruce begged him to take on the job for his next movie. Samo's friend Yun Biao is skeptical and calls him out. And that's the end of the scene. Just a couple other brief notes. When you first introduce a character into the script, make sure you capitalize your name, followed by a physical description of who they are. You're not describing their personality, but their physical appearance. So here I have Master Yu, who is Jackie Chan's teacher when he was a child. For Master Yu, I say that he's an imposing figure despite his elder age, with wisdom etched into his face. There are other nuances to the formatting. For example, if you have a scene that's a flashback, in the scene heading, you simply establish this by using the word flashback. Then you move on to your setting. Let's say we want to give some more dramatic pauses throughout this scene. We could represent that by a beat or a pause. A pause is a longer version of the beat. In this scene, Samo is offering Yun Lo a job, and I want to increase the tension between them. So maybe I'll add a pause to show that Yun Lo is debating inside whether or not he wants to accept the job. There's other fine details you can use to increase the craft that you'll pick up on as you move forward. So now all you're going to do is start at the very beginning of your treatment and go section by section, scene by scene, and convert each synopsis into its own scene. Do that from beginning to end, and you'll arrive to the end of your first draft. Setting clearly defined goals and sticking to them is going to be vital to the success of the completion of your screenplay. Brian Tracy, a personal development author, released a study and said that 2% of people write down their goals. 2%. Putting clearly defined goals down on paper makes you 10 times more likely to accomplish them. This is why writing is so powerful. You're literally embedding into your DNA all your dreams and your aspirations. It's fuel for the fire. The rule of thumb for a screenplay is that 1 page equals 1 minute of screen time. So most movies are between 90 and 120 minutes long. That means usually your screenplay is going to be between 90 and 120 pages. If this is your first feature-length screenplay, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You don't need to write that 180-page epic out of the gates. Stick to that 90 to 120-page range. When we set goals, our subconscious mind will always work toward whatever date that we set. So for example, if we want to finish a draft in a screenplay and we set the deadline for 2 months from now, we're more likely to complete it at the end of that 2 months. As opposed to, if we set the deadline for 6 weeks, we're going to make moves within our subconscious mind to hit that 6-week deadline. This phenomenon is very useful because we can use it to our advantage. If you say you want to take a year to finish a screenplay, it will take a year. If you say you want to take 2 weeks, it's going to take 2 weeks. This is like clockwork. Now, sometimes we can get too ambitious and say, I want to finish a draft in 1 day. That's not possible. We're going to overwhelm ourselves and we'll quit. I think a good starting point is to aim for 10 to 20 pages a day to knock out your screenplay. With our pre-production work that we're going to put into this, that's more than possible. Another thing to consider is don't limit yourself if you hit that 20-page benchmark on that first day out of the gates. Keep going. When we start that momentum and the snowball starts to roll, you roll with the flow. You keep it going. We'll review this technique later, but there's been a lot of famous screenplays that have been written in a short amount of time. Movies like Rocky and Austin Powers, the first draft was completed in about 3 days. Obviously, we're going to write numerous drafts of the screenplay, and those films are fundamentally different than when they first started, but it goes to show that you can accomplish way more than you think. Most people don't know how much they can actually push themselves. As human beings, we're wired for survival. We can push ourselves further than we think. And screenplay writing is a great opportunity to test your limits. Push yourself to hit sooner deadlines than you think. Aim for 10 to 20 pages a day and completing that first draft between 4 and 6 weeks. I think that's a good starting point. Remember, if you tell yourself it's going to take 8 weeks to complete a screenplay, it will take 8 weeks. I've written over 50 scripts, and every time I set the deadline, I hit it on the last day. So I like to push that deadline forward. If you think the first draft's going to take 6 weeks, then cut it down to 4. See what happens. You can also write down goals outside of the actual screenplay. Write what you want to accomplish with the movie itself, whether that's holding a red carpet premiere or winning an Oscar for best screenplay. There's no dream that's too big that you can't accomplish. You want to get everything on that page as fast as you can. Chug out that first draft. It should be like diarrhea. Just get it out. Word vomit. Do whatever you need to do to spit this out as quick as possible. I guarantee you, with clearly defined goals and pushing your deadlines, you can accomplish everything quicker, faster, and more effective than you think. talked about this at the beginning of the course, but a screenplay is like the tip of an iceberg. As you can see, we're putting 90% of the work into the process before we even get to the screenplay. This is by design. It's much more difficult to open up a blank page and just start writing a perfect screenplay. The screenplay is the last piece of the puzzle. By the time we get to actually writing the screenplay, we've already done all the work. The challenging part is over. Now we're just translating everything we've already come up with and putting it down on the page. Dialogue is how we reveal character. Subtly showing someone's character through words is the best way to get across their character. When I think about dialogue, the biggest thing I try and avoid is expositional dialogue. I never want to be on the nose with what I'm trying to say through a character. There is no shortcut to writing good dialogue. It takes practice, repetition, and experience. One good way to practice getting good at dialogue is to go out in the real world and just listen to people. Go to a coffee shop and just listen to a conversation that's going on behind you. When you're in line, pay attention when two people are talking. You start to pick up different subtleties and the way that people express themselves. The process of writing is reaching into our subconscious mind and putting the words that we see inside our brain. Your characters are going to talk to one another inside your mind. That doesn't make you crazy. It makes you a writer. So a lot of the times, you just have to listen to what they're saying and write it down on the page. Listen to how characters communicate with one another inside your mind. How do they talk? How do they feel? What do they do for fun? Things you'll notice on the first draft is that you'll be very expositionally heavy on the dialogue, as well as a lot of the characters will sound the same because it's just you writing. This is why having feedback from your friends and other writers is so important, because they can point out the things that you don't see. We could do several courses on dialogue by itself. I, for one, am far from an expert. However, I can observe my thoughts, and I am aware of the characters in my mind and how I want them to be. And so a lot of it is just listening to your voice and writing down what you hear. The biggest lesson I've learned with dialogue and stage action is to show, don't tell. This is a classic writer's rule. You don't want to tell the audience the information. You want to show them. Don't tell someone that a character is angry. Show them angry. You don't want to tell people exactly what it is that's happening. You want to show them. Lead the audience on the way. The audience, especially in today's saturated market where we're consuming more and more content every single day, is very smart. So you don't always have to put things on a silver platter for them. Let the audience do some work. Let them come to their own conclusions. An entire screenplay is dialogue and stage action. That's all. You're not saying what every character is feeling. You're not describing the scene in fine detail. A screenplay should read very quickly. I'm going to tell you a Hollywood secret that most people won't tell you. No one wants to read a screenplay, especially in the film industry. There are millions of writers with their own script and producers who are going through hundreds of scripts a day. It can be boring, tedious, repetitive. Most of the time, a producer gives a script about 5 pages before they put it aside. So you really don't have a lot of time to catch their attention. So you don't want to get bogged down by writing tons of dialogue and tons of stage action. A screenplay should read like a movie. It should be going about 1 page a minute. It should only take about an hour and a half to get through an entire screenplay. Probably less. Most people can plow through it in an hour, if it's well written. However, if you have full page after full page of stage action and dialogue and monologues, people are going to lose interest really quickly. It needs to be snappy. You got to move quick. One of my college professors, Teal Minton, said, "There should be way more white on the page than black ink." Pack your words with meaning so you can write less and use less and make it read quicker. That's the goal here. Less is more. Show, don't tell. This is a big moment. After converting all of the scenes from your treatment to the screenplay, you should have your first draft completed. It's very exciting. The work is not done. We still have many drafts to go. After you complete the first draft of your screenplay, put it away for a week or two. We want a fresh pair of eyes when we revisit the script, because inevitably, we're going to discover things that we aren't happy about. And that's okay. There's no reason to panic. Ernest Hemingway once said, "The only kind of writing is rewriting." But what does he know? He didn't really do anything. Writing is a continuous process. We never actually stop. So now we're going to move on to what I call the ping pong method. This is a rewriting process that helps you get to the next draft quickly and efficiently. And it also boosts the quality of the screenplay. So here's how it works. You have your first draft of the screenplay written in its correct format. Now what we're going to do is open up our screenplay in one window and the fish tank in the other window. And what happens is you're going to go scene by scene in the screenplay and transfer it back to the fish tank. All you're doing is dictating from one document to the other. As you're transferring from the screenplay back to the fish tank, you're going to notice mistakes, nuances, big picture ideas, and other things that you didn't see before. It's going to give you a fresh perspective. The best part about this is that you're naturally going to make the changes necessary to improve the quality. Not only is this a great way to improve your screenplay, but it gives you another perspective on the story as a whole. We want to be attacking the story from every angle possible. We need to make sure that the screenplay is airtight. So here's where the ping pong method comes in. After you finish transferring from the screenplay to the fish tank, you're going to bounce it back and you're going to start again. You're going to write from the fish tank your new draft into a fresh screenplay document. So you're going to open up a new blank script document. And once again, you go scene by scene, from the fish tank back to the fresh screenplay. And guess what? It's going to happen again. You're going to notice new things that you didn't notice before. This is where the ping pong comes into play. We're bouncing back and forth between the fish tank and the screenplay. And throughout that process, we're going to naturally notice things that we weren't noticing before, and it's going to keep improving. By the time you get to a polished screenplay, you'll probably go through the process of bouncing between the fish tank and the script document between 5 and 10 times. While that might sound tedious and repetitive, it's worth it in the end. The ping pong method is my favorite way to improve a screenplay. Let the process flow and take care of itself, and you will see a drastic improvement from draft to draft. All right, so we're talking about script doctors here, and I have the maestro himself, Scott Chrisman. He is a family man. He runs the Cedar Rapids Film Festival. We've worked together on numerous projects. He writes, makes his own stuff. We've been working together, probably about on and off for like 15 years or something pretty ridiculous like that. Can you kind of explain what you do from the perspective of a script doctor in relation to our working relationship?
Sure. I think my broad view of it is I'm helping to clarify what the screenwriter's vision is for the film. So are you really saying what you think you're saying? Are the foundational pillars in place that you think are there? Are you serving the original idea of what you were looking for? And at a basic level, do things make sense as a reader? Is it clear what's happening in the actions and in the characters? And I will go through and I help identify themes. So clarifying, refining, expanding if things need expanded, remove and edit. What I think one of my particular talents is in this area is to kind of have I think of it as like an exploded diagram view of the screenplay. So if you change this piece over here, how does it affect this piece over here? And then things in between, how do they react within that timeline as well? So if you're making adjustments, how does it affect things 50 pages from now? And then just kind of be an objective voice. So after you've advanced it to a place where you're ready to share ideas, is it fitting what you're aiming at? Are there other angles to be considered? Maybe at a certain point, a few drafts in, punch up the jokes, punch up the lines, maybe, or just as an objective outside view, are the characters sounding like they're supposed to? Like some things might seem off a little bit. Like, I'm not sure they would say that way based on the rest of the things you have here. So it's not always tinkering too much. It's more helping the original writer explore, hey, are you saying what you want to say here? And if you got some superfluous things, can we take those out? Are things serving the story or not? And just adjusting the characters. Also to ask questions. I like expanding just the possibilities through, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this person being this type of thing, or adjusting them in a certain way?
That's great. That's a really good summary. And can you just speak to the importance of just getting feedback from someone and finding the right chemistry between someone that is bouncing those questions back to you?
Mm-hmm. I think you want to seek feedback when you're comfortable in a place with your story you want to tell. You can also do some exploration in terms of, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Does this make sense? When you're asking those type of questions, it may be time to search out an additional input of, here's what I'm trying to do. Is it doing that or not? Do my references make sense for either a general audience or maybe a hyper-specific audience? And in that case, you may have to do a little research to understand what these things are. You don't want someone who's trying to write the script for you. You want someone who's writing the script with you or helping you to go down those extra pathways to go, all right, was there something down this alleyway? Oh, maybe not. Okay. But at least have that exchange of helping to extract what's in your head of, okay, here's how I'm reading this. Is that how you expected that to be? Or did you mean something completely different? Because if you did, then we need some different words here. But having that nice, easy exchange of, here's what I think you're saying. Is that what you meant? And if it's not, how do we look around for other things? When you start having that second document that's filling up with questions as a screenwriter, that might be a time to seek some additional thoughts as well. Here's what I've got. Do these things go together? And what kind of things can I add? In our exchange, I think I try to not influence the story so much as make sure it's coming out of you in a cohesive way. And with this last one especially, we've had a lot of, call it global changes on things of, okay, it was kind of this, now it's sort of this. And ultimately through multiple drafts here, we figured out, okay, here's the through line of what this is. And these are the parts that aren't changing as we continue forward. So this is probably the foundation or the skeleton of it. What do we change within those pieces to make it do what you want it to do?
That's great. And it's all really good stuff. And last question, I love collaboration, working with different people and circle of folks that I creatively trust and like to show work to. But when it comes to specific projects, I feel like we've talked about this of sometimes having too many cooks in the kitchen. Like how do you what's the line between feedback and who you listen to, and how do you let that influence play out?
Mm-hmm. I think you want to look for some level at least of objectivity. And whether that means you're talking to someone who has never seen your script before, I think you and I have a good working relationship because we can both step back from the material and get sort of a wider view of it. But with other folks I've done it with, I think they just appreciate the fresh eyes on it. Some of that initial contact of, I don't know what this is, I've read through it, and here's what it means to me. And helping to understand, because yeah, I mean, every screenwriter's got people around them, and if you think about, hey, I wrote this thing and I showed it to my best friend, I showed it to my mom, I showed it to a coworker, maybe. All of those are going to have different flavors of feedback, including, "Oh, you're the best thing ever! Don't change a word. It was perfect," from probably mom. But then having that just objective view of, "Well, I'm not sure that this works." So you want somebody that can be honest with you and doesn't even. Sometimes it's even best if they have no stake in it. They don't really even have a thought of what the story is necessarily. So having a comfortable exchange enough to say to whoever you're talking to, "I don't think this works, and I need some way of getting through it." Maybe altering it, maybe adjusting it, maybe throwing it into a different draft and just go, this didn't work. We're going to do something else here. Again, just kind of extracting it from the screenwriter's brain of those innate things that you're so close to it and so deep into it that you don't even notice anymore. So, this is a foundational pillar. I just don't have it on the page yet. So trying to explore those things and just line up the dominoes where you think they should go. And if you start knocking the first one down and they go off in a bizarre direction, well, did we want to go this way, or do we need to move things back into a different space?
That's great, Scott. This is awesome. I appreciate the insight and wisdom. And moms give the best feedback. Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Scott. And this was very valuable.
Anytime, man.
So, how do you know when your screenplay is finished? Unfortunately, it never really is. Even through filming of the movie, you'll still be rewriting your screenplay. When we gain new perspective in life, that's going to impact our writing, and that's going to change our perspective on the story. The point of us writing the screenplay is to actually make the movie. So while yes, a screenplay on its own can be entertaining and a finished product, the end goal is to turn it into a movie. And we want to get it in front of those people that can help us make it. Based on my experiences, I think between 8 and 10 complete drafts will get you to a place where it's ready to be made. And once again, you're never actually finished with the screenplay. You're going to continuously rewrite, and that's okay. If you're a writer, the process is never finished. You're never done writing. Even when you finish this screenplay, you move on to the next one. You can get to a place where you feel comfortable in trying to move it forward and make a movie out of it. However, at the end of the day, it comes down to you. You get to decide when the film is ready to be made. Congratulations on making it this far. Writing a screenplay is one of the toughest endeavors that you can take on. Digging down deep within ourselves and pulling out a screenplay is a very impressive accomplishment. So pat yourself on the back. Before we wrap up, I want to bring up one other technique that I've also used in the past. This could be considered the red button of screenwriting. I call it feet to fire. Basically, it's putting yourself in a position where you write a feature-length screenplay in an incredibly short amount of time. I brought this up earlier during the goals lesson, but a number of famous screenplays have been written in a very short amount of time. I've brought up the film Rocky a couple of times throughout this course. That film and the story behind the making of it has had a huge influence on my life. The making of Rocky is Hollywood mythology. Sylvester Stallone was Rocky. He was down on his luck, he was a struggling actor, he had to sell his dog for food, and he wasn't going anywhere fast. One night, he went to a boxing match between the great Muhammad Ali and a relatively unknown Chuck Wepner. And the fight was expected to last about 3 rounds. Instead, Chuck Wepner took Muhammad Ali to the limit, and they had a 15-round match. This was very unexpected, and it inspired Stallone so much that he went back to his crummy apartment and he wrote nonstop for 3 days. He painted his windows black, he closed out the entire world around him, and he just wrote. 72 hours later, he had the first draft of Rocky. Again, as I mentioned, he went through subsequent countless drafts to get it to the point where it became an Oscar-winning screenplay. However, the inception and the first draft took 72 hours for him to write. And that's the basis for my feet to fire technique. I've been aware of that story for my entire professional life, and so I know that it's possible. The human brain is a fascinating muscle, and there's so much mystery because we don't know the full potential of what it can accomplish. We just know that we can do more than we think. There's unlimited potential to what we can accomplish. There is no set number and there is no science for how long it takes to write a screenplay. But we have the awareness and the knowledge that people have written a lot in a short amount of time. And that's what Feet to Fire is all about. If you're in a situation where you need to crank out a draft in 3 to 7 days, you can do it. And there's been many times where my back is against the wall and I need to make a move, where I set that deadline for 5 days and I chug out a draft of the script. I shut off my phone, I shut off the outside world, I do everything I can to live exclusively in the day-to-day of the screenplay. I take care of all my real life obligations and then I close them out and then I live inside the world of the script. You can do that. Some people think it's not possible with their schedule or their job or their family, but when push comes to shove, you get to make the decision, and you can make that happen. This is very much a red button, last resort emergency situation. We don't always want to write with this kind of urgency, because sometimes it's actually better to give your script some breathing room. It's like baking something in the oven. You want to let the bread rise, and you need perspective and time and a day-to-day routine to give it that breadth and depth that it needs to really become something special. But if you need to crank out a draft, then set the deadline for 3 days and write it in 72 hours. You're literally holding your feet to the fire. You'll do anything you have to finish that screenplay in a very short amount of time. I've even used external motivation to make this happen. I'll contact producers before I have a script finished and say, hey, I have this really good draft. Can I send it to you by the end of the week? And they'll respond, yeah, sure, go ahead. All of a sudden, I'm in a situation where the clock is ticking and I gotta go. And so I have no other choice but to write. I don't always recommend this, but as a last resort and a technique to help you really push the pedal to the metal, this does work. Remember, the most important thing is that you can do more than you think you can do. Your subconscious mind will respond to the deadline you give it. So if you need to finish something in a short amount of time, just know that it's possible and you can do it. This is the feet to fire technique. Even after completing endless drafts of your screenplay, the work is just beginning. We're going to be talking to investors, producers, actors, putting together business packages, networking. In case you haven't figured it out by now, our work is never actually complete. Making your way through the film industry is the adventure of a lifetime. There's highs and lows, heartbreak, celebrations. There's a sense that anything can happen and every day brings something new. That makes for an exciting life. Maybe not the most stable, but most exciting. As we wrap things up here, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on this journey. I've learned a lot, and I hope that you have too. And my takeaway message is that I want you to write your screenplay, and I want you to make your movie. I'm excited to see what you're going to do, and I hope you utilize this series to continue on your path. Thank you.